Bye, darling.
Heard that?
Are we live?
We're live.
Hello.
We're live.
Hey, how's everybody doing out there in the interwebs? I am your host, Q. Thank you guys for joining. I see Punchy's here already. So we've got some fun topics ready to go for you today. We are, if you haven't been with us before, we are Out of the Darkness. We are definitely living in some pretty interesting times, guys. Some very interesting times. So I'm excited to get into all this. I had this great monologue just to open with, but I don't even want to do that. I just want to kind of jump into the meat of everything. I think the most interesting thing that I've seen all week, Tim, and Soder, in regards to the times that we live in, is that they are now saying that. Did you read? They're saying that that dodgeball is considered a form of bullying now. Have you heard? Have you heard this?
No. What?
I'm thinking kids today would have never survived a day in my life growing up. So, but yeah, so they're saying the dodgeball, which was like my favorite thing. I actually started an intramural dodgeball league in college just because it was kind of fun to get out there and chuck balls at each other. But yeah, so now they're saying that is no longer acceptable to play dodgeball in some schools. So,
yeah, well, one thing, the schools have this desire to take away competition, okay? Because that's fundamentally what dodgeball is it's one of those pure sports where king of the hill. If you can throw it good, if you can move fast, you're going to be on the floor longer. Although ironically with dodgeball, even when I was a kid, you didn't want to hit the kid in the corner that couldn't move or couldn't throw it. They were usually out right away anyway. You wanted to go after your friends and get a headshot, or even better, get a different type of shot and then just laugh your rear end off, right? So I don't know, but I guess the problem is those of us who are now adults realize that the world is a competitive place, and if you don't give these opportunities to compete, the other thing is the whole participation ribbon thing, right? This is what we're all tying into.
Right.
Everyone's a winner every single time. My biggest problem with that is how does someone know what they're good at and what they're not good at if they're told they're good at everything? We're not all good at everything. I mean, I'm not good at growing hair. Probably my only fault, right? But no, there are things that I am not good at. And then there are things that I am good at. You first of all have to discover those things, and to your benefit of what you are good at, you want to pursue. Why do you pursue it? Because it feels good. Why does it feel good? Because you have affirmation typically. There's some other reasons.
Sure.
Some people are truly self-motivated, but that's a rare case. Usually mom and dad say, "Hey, you're good at that." And suddenly you're getting the extra batting lesson because you happen to be good at baseball or something like that. But many of our talents, and when I tell kids, I said it's the soft skills that you need to know what you're good at. Everyone wants, when they're growing up, wants to be a fireman or president of the United States. Well, police officer, whatever the case is. But the reality is when you're adult, it's, do you like to be around people or would you rather be alone? That's important for your career. You don't want to become an engineer and sit at a computer doing drafting if you need to be around people. What if you hate being around people or you don't want to speak in front of people? Well, pursuing a career. So anyway, I know it's just soccer not soccer. Dodgeball. I know it's just dodgeball. Now, if they want to outlaw something, they should outlaw soccer because that's a ridiculous sport. But that's for another time.
That is
pathetic.
That is the world's sport. Yeah.
Yeah.
The problem. So my brother and I were talking because we've been watching soccer all day. So the Women's World Cup is on right now.
I love the Women's World Cup.
Right.
No, that's good. They know how to play it. That's much better than the men's.
Well, they actually are. They're much more competitive than the U.S. men's. But the problem is that, and the reason for it is that in this in the United States anyway, our best athletes have other routes to go in order to make more money. I mean, they're going to make more money playing football. They're going to make more money playing basketball. They're going to make more money playing baseball. So a lot of the athletes that we have that could go on to play soccer and do quite well, they end up playing other sports. So, I mean, I can think of probably 10 or 15. You don't want to advertise for Diet Coke?
No product placement here.
No product.
I have no idea what this is.
Is it root beer?
Actually, people are going to question what's in it now.
Yeah.
Look, I'm opening it for the first time.
So, but I think that's probably the biggest issue. But yeah, the women have done remarkable. So I enjoy watching. I just enjoy watching soccer. Period.
But the dodgeball, we'll stay on that. Yeah, it's an eye roll that they're starting to outlaw or out. You know, when I was a kid, we played a game. Well, I don't know what the proper way to call it now. Smear the. Yeah.
Well,
tackle the other person who happens to happens to have, which that probably isn't an appropriate phrase. But you want to talk about a king or the king of the hill, literally the game itself. But you want to. Where you go and chase down whoever happens to have the football and everyone tackles them and piles on top of them.
Right.
You know, there's no way you can do that now.
Yeah. No, that's not acceptable. So yeah, you would definitely be picking on the poor kid, whoever it was.
Although there again, it's the person who can run the fastest and creates the biggest attitude with it that you want to hit the hardest. Well, there's something to be said. When I can bring it up, I'll bring the name of the book. It would be a definite recommendation for me, which I don't know if you recommend books on this, but this is a good one because it addresses all of this. But there is something about kids with free play is what kind of I think the term when we were called playing as a kid, but now They call it free play, where you go out, parents throw you out of the house and say, go find something to do. And we go up in the woods and get into trouble climbing trees or, you play tackle football or, we used to play I grew up in a Chicago suburb, so we used to play hockey in the street, just like Wayne's World. And suddenly that's an old movie, so half the people listening probably haven't seen Wayne's World.
Yeah, I'd say half.
We actually did stuff like that. But, learning how to interact, learning how to communicate, learning what your talents are, what they aren't, those are all important things. And as they call it with free play, that's something that needs to be done. So I am going to tell you about a book real quick that addresses a lot of what you're talking about here. It's an excellent book. It's called The Coddling of the American Mind, and it's by Jonathan Haidt. Now, when you hear something like The Coddling of the American Mind, it sounds like something you and I would write. You know, it would be premiered and highlighted on Sean Hannity at night or something like that. This Jonathan Haidt, and I read another one of his books. I won't go into it, which was really good though, but it led me to this one. Jonathan Haidt is actually a liberal Jewish professor.
Okay.
And what he basically does is uses sociology, psychology, and data from this day and age. It dives deep into it kind of focuses on what we're seeing in society now from the millennials and iGen. Right. And actually, I always blame things on the millennials. I always say I hate millennials. But it's actually apparently the iGen that I hate a little bit more. That's the one that comes after the millennials.
It's the baby boomers that I have the biggest problem with.
No, the baby boomers. I'm kind of just so you know, in some lists, I'm a baby boomer. Not many, because it ended in 1964.
And we've talked about the problems I have with you. So.
Yeah. So anyway, but The Coddling of the American Mind, if you want to be frustrated, enlightened, but at the end feeling like you're kind of have a better understanding so you know how to communicate with people, it really is explaining a lot of this stuff that we're talking about quite well. It's a great book.
Sure. No, I mean, you'll be the same today as you are. You'll be the same tomorrow as you are today, except for either the books you read or the people that you meet. So, I'm always going to, if you have great books in mind, whether you're in the audience, whether you are on the show, you definitely bring those up. So a couple things, interesting things happening right now. So I started an absolute war on Facebook, Tim.
When was this?
This was about 3 days ago.
Oh.
And I, of course, no matter how hard I try, I'm always considered to be A, self-loathing, and B, not black enough. And those are the yeah, those are the two things that
you can't win for losing.
I can't. No matter how pro-black I try to be, I end up being considered to be anti-black, which, right? I mean, and everybody understands great. I'm not black. I'm actually, I'm sandy beige, so everyone knows that, guys. So, guys, sandy beige, 42 lives matter.
That's probably why you have problems.
No, because I think because now, black people don't say black anymore. They say people of color, POC. So sandy beige 42 is a color. So technically I am a person of color. So I should fall under those protections. But anyway, I digress.
But aren't I then?
Huh?
Aren't I then too?
And dude, you're about translucent. But
I got some pink in there.
Yeah, so we're gonna leave that alone. But okay, so Tim, so the thing that got me in trouble is I said since 1973, and none of these are the things we're gonna talk about, but since I have you here,
yep,
and fortunate enough to have a representative from our district here, it's great. So I said since 1973 that we have killed over 17 million black babies.
Yep.
Okay. Since 1973.
Yep.
And I said, if black lives are to matter, we have to stop killing the next generation. It's a must, right? And so for the most part, most people agreed with that. They agreed with the fact that, hey, we've got to do a better job of killing the next generation.
Yep.
But then we got this whole other subgroup of people who started talking about, well, the issue is that that we have so many people who are living in poverty, and why is it that because black people have been dealt a lesser hand, that those are the issues that lead to abortion. But the things that I try to bring up, Tim, is that no, it's not. While you might think that you're in control of this, you're falling into line, because just the strategic placement of Planned Parenthoods are for the purpose of decreasing the black population or the undesirables, right?
Correct.
I mean, so you might say that you are in full control, but you're falling in line. You are doing exactly what you are supposed to do, and that is reducing the number of undesirables, quote unquote, undesirables out there. So, I mean, that's what Margaret Sanger wished to accomplish, and now she has people believing that they're doing it, or not her, but her group has people believing that they're doing it of their own accord.
Well, and look at the arguments for, if you will, accessible abortion. Every single argument that comes to my mind, even when it comes, because the overall argument is this is a woman's body, because who's gonna argue against that?
Right.
But it's the woman's body. She has a right to decide, because, and then they give examples of when a woman might choose to have an abortion. And in every single circumstance, it's an undesirable person, right?
Right.
What about the welfare? So like some of the arguments people give me, are you going to adopt all these kids? What about the welfare that these people are going to be on and stuff like that? Well, there's a presumption of lesser value there to society, which is amazing to me, because the progressives by far and away are the predominant pro-abortion people.
Sure.
And they're the ones that keep arguing. They're the ones that keep arguing that we discriminate against people.
Right.
When in fact, they're the ones that are discriminating in the truest sense, saying this person has less value, and we're going to put it on this woman here to decide. But if they have less value, we totally understand that they're to be killed. That's what we're saying.
Right.
Fascinating to me.
It is.
And for people that are listening, don't realize that here in Minnesota, we have I think it's 18 Planned Parenthood locations in Minnesota. 18. And I forget the exact number, but it's about 16 of the numbers that are in poor black communities. There's one here in Wilmer that's sort of a neutral place, and then I think there's one other one in greater Minnesota, outstate, as some people would call it, outside the Twin Cities. And then every other one, the actual abortion clinic itself, the one that they just a couple of years ago spent $3 million to add on to, renovate, make new or something like that, is right on the border with Minneapolis and St. Paul. Right in a poor neighborhood.
Of course. But the problem is that I feel that at this point that, and it's sad, but it's almost looked as though abortion is a form of, or being treated as a form of birth control, right? And that's the sad part about it, is that, you know, no one wants to discuss the other options that are out there, you know, that can prevent pregnancy or unplanned pregnancy, as opposed to just snuffing out a life. But so I took some heavy fire as a result of that this week.
Where was the fire coming from?
From other black people.
But now let's have the conversation. What were they saying?
They were saying that, well, I can
bring them up.
I can pull up.
While you're looking, let me say this one thing is it is sort of under, I get, based on the common conversations we have with abortion, that there are people from the African American communities that are speaking up and saying, you have no right to do this, don't speak for me, whatever. But it is startling to me for everything that we've just said. And that's one of the conversations that need to be had is I want to hear the arguments of why, and maybe it'll come up here on the feed, but why an African American would say, please allow me to abort. Because when we have that, let's have that conversation. I want to hear the arguments. I don't want to hear the usual arguments, but what are the arguments that you're getting?
So the first argument was which systematic oppressions contribute to this issue, and where are your posts to hold white supremacists accountable? Now, again, this wasn't an issue by which I wanted to promote race, in the sense of I was speaking out for children, right? I did not want to have, but it seems as though the reason why I hate having these discussions, especially in a public forum, is because everyone always tends to take the discussion to the extreme.
They devolve it. Yep.
It's every one of these abortions are being done because of incest and rape, okay, or for the mother's life, right? Every last one of them, in the argument, for argument's sake, are being done for one of those three reasons, right? Which we know that majority of them are not.
When you say majority, understand that incest and rape together add up to about 1%. And life of the mother is a fallacy, because abortion is never a procedure which is used. I posted this on Facebook about a week ago. Abortion is never a procedure by a doctor to save a woman's life. Ever. It's not in the books.
Well, and one time maybe it was. I don't know, but at one time maybe it was. But due to modern medicine and advances in modern medicine, that's not the case anymore. So that was one.
But yeah, going to the when are you going to speak up about white supremacy is meant as a distraction, because it doesn't. One of the distractions I get whenever I make a salient point on social media, you know what people bring to me? Well, what about how awful Trump is? I don't care what subject it is, but it's always what about Trump, right? How come you defend Trump? Which ironically, probably starting a whole new stream of arguments here, I've never actually really battled on behalf of President Trump. Sure. I like the guy, I like what he's doing, but I've never been one of those that have been, not because I've avoided it, but I have my own discussion.
Right.
So if you want to steer it always back to there, I go, well, let's have a conversation on that another time, but answer my question. So when someone says, well, what are you doing about white supremacy? I say, well, let's get back to the question at hand.
Right.
Yeah.
Correct. And to be brutally honest, I've addressed white supremacy on this show, obviously for obvious reasons. I'm not a fan of it, but for obvious reasons. But I have in my life, I've talked about this before, that I have experienced through racism. I've experienced that in my life. Um, it has made me. I've striven to get better as a result of it, not not bitter, right? I've looked at it as a diving board to help get me out of situations, as opposed to, spend my life becoming a victim. I mean, what we're literally saying is that there are people who believe that they are killing their child because of oppression of someone else. So someone has that much control over you that that you are going to end the life of your child as a result
But
of
you
it.
know what the irony is? That act, that act of aborting your child, and if it's viewed as an empowerment thing, is actually disempowering
Sure.
and plays in here's how things are so turned on their head on this argument is if you want to point to white supremacy, it's the aborting of black children,
Sure.
right?
Sure.
So it's been flipped on its head.
Right.
You want to be empowered? You want to be empowered? Have your child. And I'm not going after people other argument. I'm not going after people who have had abortions. The thing that really frustrates me is our society.
That was the next argument.
Yep.
Is how dare you? There are people who have had abortion who are struggling with this decision
Absolutely.
and are feel guilty as it is. How dare you judge these people?
Well, there's another thing that's turned on its head. So what do the progressive left do? When because here's what happens. I will stand behind this. Okay? When a woman has an abortion, she feels grief, she feels loss. Why? Because that's a child. Okay?
Right.
That's their child. They have struggles. Now, what does the progressive left tell them to do? Celebrate it.
Right.
Now they're feeling pain and remorse and anger and possibly other emotions. And their support base that told them that this was an okay thing to do or even the right thing to do are high-fiving them. How do you handle that? Now you have this carnal knowledge of something. So here's what I say to people when they say, why are you judging someone for having an abortion? Let's clear that up. I'm not going to judge that person. I mourn for that person. I understand I'm probably the last person being a male, white male that they don't know, okay, that they need to find comfort in me. But I'm telling you that I totally understand that if someone has had an abortion or someone close to you has had an abortion, that you're dealing with things and it's painful. And I just hope that the right people can come and comfort you and build you up and hold you up. There is no condemnation from me in what you are doing there. And that's a lie that's being told by the far left, saying people are judging you. No, by me saying that abortion is not okay, that it is murder is, we have to decide as a society. This is my biggest cue. This is my biggest argument. This is what we're going to have to decide is what is that unborn child, that fetus, whatever term you want to use, that group of cells. If that is a human being, where do we go from there? If it's not a human being, where do we go from there? But that's the question that has to be answered.
But okay, so I believe that question is really even going a little bit too far even. And what I mean by that is it a life? Is it a life?
Right.
Because one argument that I heard that I believe that it's very true is this. If you found an embryo on Mars, it would be considered the greatest discovery of mankind. It would be celebrated. There would be a day named after the person who did it. It would be where were you the day that they found life on Mars?
That's right.
It would be considered life. So why is it that if they aren't people, and I mean, if it's not life, then why is it now that if we were to find it elsewhere, it would be considered life? And you know it. Let's be very honest about that. If it were a dog fetus and you treated it as they do, let's be very honest about the procedure here, and you treated it as though as we treat baby fetuses, you would go to jail. You couldn't get away with doing that to a dog. So it's scary to me that we've allowed ourselves to come to the point to where we've digressed as human beings. But again, like you said, this Trump derangement syndrome. If Trump came out for abortion, he were pro-abortion, I believe that there would be a lot of people who would be anti-abortion at that point. There are a lot of people because Trump has been. I think he's probably been one of the most pro-life presidents in my lifetime.
He's done more work for it
Sure,
than anyone
absolutely,
else. Absolutely.
absolutely.
When push comes to shove, a little bit of a frustration as a legislator for me. There's lots of pro-life, quotation marks, pro-life legislators, and they aren't against it. They do believe in life, but they don't do anything for it either.
Sure, sure.
He's actually done some stuff.
Well, so I not only watch what's going on, Soder, especially speaking with you. I not only watch what's going on in our country, but I look at what's going around the world because a lot of times you can see what's going around in the world, and it can kind of give you an idea of what's coming next, what's coming down the line. It all kind of comes across the pond, right? And one of the things that I was like, have you heard about this million person in Hong Kong? I'm sorry, forgive me. In Hong Kong, there were 1 million people that showed up to protest. Now, that's pretty amazing. That's fantastic.
A lot of people.
There's only 7 million people in the country. You got a seventh of the entire population to protest because obviously, as you know, there's been this huge discussion about whether or not Hong Kong, which considers themselves to be a sovereign nation, is part of mainland China, right? And
Right.
mainland China still will not give up the fact that, no, you are a Chinese nation. No, we are not. We have our own flag, we have our own government. We are our own nation. So the Chinese passed a law stating that if they would go into Hong Kong and extradite criminals, right? So imagine, if you will, the Chinese government coming into a country and dragging someone out that had created a crime or that committed a crime in their country, right? That's amazing to me. That's amazing to me that you get 1 million people that are willing to stand up for their rights and come out and protest. That's I think that's a wonderful thing. As long as it's peaceful, right? As long as it's a peaceful protest, then why not? But to get a seventh of your entire country's population to show up, I mean, we barely get 1 million people to show up for huge demonstrations.
Yeah.
You know, but for them to show up for that, I thought that was fantastic. But you know, I was watching. Well, my wife was reading a story to me last night. Yes, she does. She might have a great wife. She reads me stories at
You have a
bedtime,
great wife.
and and she was reading me a story by which. So right now, the Golden State Warriors are in a
They're in a fix.
they're in a fix. They are. They're fighting for their lives. They are down 3-1 in a best-of-7 series to Toronto Raptors, right? So, which kind of bothers me because I'm stuck between a rock and a hard place. I don't like California, but I dislike Canada even more, right? So I can't win in this one, right? And but so Steph Curry, which is I always stand for human rights, right? I always stand for the rights of human beings to live free. That trumps any personal feelings that I might have for the Golden State Warriors or even Steph Curry because I don't like him either because of some of the things that he has said in regards to our president and our country. But I digress. So a fan was on TV in Canada, in Toronto, and said that he was going to do some pretty awful, well, not awful things, but he was going to have relations with Steph Curry's wife if they won the championship, right?
Okay, keep
If
going.
Toronto won the
No, I
championship.
get it. Okay.
He was arrested. He was arrested for saying this, and he was charged with, what was it, petty mischief?
Is this up in Canada?
This is up in Canada. And that's scary, guys. That is scary. I mean, those are neighbors directly to the north, right? In a lot of ways, how many progressives have you heard that have wanted to mimic a lot of what goes on in Canada?
Yeah.
especially as it pertains to things like immigration, things like healthcare,
Wait,
and
we
those
want
types
to
of
be
things.
like Canada? I thought they were very restrictive in immigration policy.
Canada? Oh no, well, not after Trump. Oh, they said they would welcome anyone.
Oh, really?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. After Trump, Trudeau was all inclusive. But we talk about people like Jordan Peterson who have protested the that you have to use certain pronouns for people of the trans community and those
Right.
types of things, and how that was attack against free speech. Well, I mean, where does that stop? I got into a discussion. It was civil, I suppose. They said that on Twitter. They said, well, hate speech, in talking about Trump, hate speech is not free speech.
Which is funny because actually the root of free speech is hate speech. So hate speech actually is
Did you just
free speech.
What?
throw a hand up?
I just said,
Oh,
yeah.
looked more like a certain.
No, it did not. Golly, man. Wow.
No, don't go
I only
there.
saw
Yeah,
it
we're
out
not,
the corner of
we're
my eye.
not going there.
Our right to say things, that can be disconcerting for others is the freedoms that you need to be able to have.
Sure.
They always go back to the two free speeches you cannot do are number one, inciting people,
Right.
and there's even rules on that. When I say inciting a riot, that's not broadly defined. That's very narrowly defined.
Is that
Oh, no,
like
I'm sorry. Let me say this.
screaming
No,
fire
I'm
in a
sorry.
theater type
Well,
thing?
I said that wrong. Let me start over again. The one is saying you cannot yell fire in a theater.
Right.
You cannot throw that up, and you cannot. I'm messing it up, but there's only two things there. Yeah, because when you say what's it called, the captive audience, you cannot say certain things to a captive audience, like fire in the theater.
Right.
You're captive,
Sure.
and you cannot incite. That is right. You cannot incite rioting, but that's even narrowly defined by the courts. That is not a broad definition. Like, well, you got me upset, but
Right.
now you can't do that anymore. So, really, some of the most provocative things that were said by the founders of our nation were hate speech.
Sure.
They were very hateful sort of thing.
Well,
so that whole hate speech is not free speech sounds real nice and sing-songy, but it's actually not.
I've been obsessed with a show on Amazon, and I believe it's called Adam, if I'm not mistaken. And essentially, the show, it's a mini series on John Adam, and it takes you from his life as a farmer, all the way through his life as president of the United States. It is fascinating, absolutely fascinating to me to see his hatred, if you will, for people like Thomas Jefferson, right? Uh, for people of that ilk, the Federalists, um, and to see that, but even in their disagreements and their strong dislike for each other, they were extremely civil, extremely civil, and it was easy for you to look at it and say, you know what, I think these people are just they really just want what's best for the country, but they want their own brand of what's best for the country. But it was so eloquent that, I mean, the speeches that they had against each other, I mean, just extremely, extremely eloquent, well thought out, well written. And so, I was talking to my brother that you guys got to meet, Black Nick, and he was saying, brought up a great point, saying that he felt that social media was really the lead to the breakdown of civil discourse, right? In that when people are in front of each other, many times there are certain limits to what you say. But if there are not limits to what you say, there's certainly limits to how you say it, right? Um, when you are having to put a face and a name to certain things, you are not going to just be very careless with how you say things and flippantly. But when you have 150 characters now?
I think it's 240.
Oh,
On
okay.
Twitter?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's quite a bit.
Yeah. So, but
280.
but even still, at 280 in under 300 characters,
Yep.
You aren't able to be quite as eloquent as you could be with an entire ream of paper, right?
Right.
And to be able to explain yourself. but yeah, it's quite a it's quite a it, we've gone quite a way away from quite a distance away from civil discourse. We really have.
Yeah, but
Um,
we don't duel anymore. That was considered very civilized.
We should maybe bring that back.
I
No
think
idea for next year, by
There
the
was
way.
there was actually you bring some on, then I can't explain it.
are you
But there
talking
was
like dueling pistols, or are you
yeah,
talking
duel,
about like
old,
dueling pianos?
no,
'Cause
an
I
old
like that.
fashioned duel where you
Wasn't
take your
there-
10 paces and turn around.
Wasn't there
And
a state that just legalized combat? People could just say, "We're gonna fight." Cops would be involved, kind of as referees. If it didn't get too out of hand.
how could that possibly go wrong? No, and actually, I did read something about a year ago, so I'm not going to be able to articulate it. But they gave arguments for how dueling and all the rules that are associated with dueling was actually a very formal way to settle pretty serious discourse.
Sure.
And the article gave an argument, not to bring it back per se, but this is how it was good in the olden days, sort of thing. I wish I could find it and bring it up because it actually made some pretty good points. I think, and I do think with social media, you're exactly right. I think it also gives accessibility to people in a good way and a bad way that will say things that wouldn't ordinarily have the forum to be able to say it. So you have inarticulate people to kind of go to the well and say things. My bigger concern is when that social media then translates into real life stuff.
Sure.
Point for example, when someone being a legislator, I sometimes get some harsh things said my way via social media. Big surprise there. Well, I had one guy one time that the best I could describe, he was trying to make a biblical reference, but the way I read it was he talked about beating with the jawbone of an ass, and the way he wrote it, I thought, good Solomon reference, right?
Right.
I think he was basically saying he wanted to beat me and my wife with the jawbone of an ass, the way that he said it.
Samson.
I'm saying
Yeah.
that's Solomon. Sorry, everyone.
Solomon was the baby cut in half.
That's right. Even better. So,
Wow.
but Samson was going to, but the beating with, so someone threatened us on social media. Now, I sent it to the proper authorities. They kind of monitor this stuff. I didn't feel personally threatened until this person walks up and says, "I'm so-and-so. Did you read what I said on social media?" Then you kind of go, okay. Then you start looking to see what, if they have like a, if they have.
But in a small way, I respect that. I respect at least he was willing to stand behind what he wrote.
No, I'm saying he showed up.
Oh,
I'm saying
okay,
if that
okay,
would've
okay,
happened.
okay,
My
right.
point with social media is it gives freedom for people to say things,
Right.
but do they execute on them? And if there is something that concerns me is social media doesn't embolden the person who wrote that. Someone reading it might embolden them.
Sure.
I had in a committee hearing. We won't go into what the committee was because that'd be a whole other subject. But basically, I had a lot of people that were upset with me. It had to do with a prison in my district. Okay, and there was someone in the audience who yelled out from behind, "What if I shot you dead in the street? Then you'd really understand that Black Lives Matter." Now, the woman who said it, it's hard to put context on a statement like that, except for to say that the woman who said it, I wasn't really feeling threatened at the moment. But what about the young teen
Right.
who's sitting near her and hears that and says, "You know what? She's right. And we're going to show him.
We're going to teach him."
That's where the concern for me comes in that whole thing with that. But I do think the positive side of social media on all of this stuff and free speech is even the inarticulate and people without a voice have the ability to come forward and speak their own voice. Even if it might be a little harsh, even if it might be out of line, even if they kind of like, where did that come from sort of thing, they have that opportunity. And I do think that in time, social media will mature and we'll get back in. We have uncivil discourse in society right now, not because of social media. Our society is not agreeing on a lot of things. Social media is just the form in which we're seeing it acted out.
Well, they're actually there's certain platforms that are considering, because they've already done a major purge of
I'm surprised you
Nazis.
didn't get caught up in that Vox apocalypse.
Yeah, I'm surprised I didn't. fortunately I have a winning complexion, so
I don't
uh,
know. They
But that's a tricky
they
thing.
they even banned people who were anti-Nazi. That was the
well,
weird part.
they did, but essentially with YouTube, anyone who was the way that I guess the way the algorithm worked is even if you were doing a history lesson on the Nazis, you were uh, being kicked off.
Right.
But they're actually talking about um, they're actually talking about right now doing away with any climate change deniers. So anyone who is a climate change denier, taking that information off of the platform. And my problem with that is of course, climate change, I guess, is also one of the things that we when I was in school and you were in school, probably Tim when you were in school. I mean, of course, Captain Planet used to talk about um, you know uh, global warming and all of that. I mean, it was always considered to be global warming. Then the somewhere
Actually, it started out when I was young enough. It started out as the next ice age is coming. Just so you're aware.
so yeah, I
Early
was
'70s, it was ice age is coming, and then it was
there was a
global
Time
warming.
magazine article. What was it, like 1973? I
Sure.
want to say,
Yeah.
right? that to prepare for the next ice age. And I remember, well, I wasn't around, but I was in doing a little bit of research on this. They had a penguin on the front, and they were talking about the next ice age coming. So you're absolutely correct. So we went from that to global warming, and now it's just climate change. But I think that that's a little bit disingenuous in the sense that no one really denies climate change. The climate's changing. It always has. It always will change, as
Yep.
far as I'm concerned.
There's no glaciers here right now. We have wonderful lakes in Minnesota because the glaciers are gone.
Sure, and I mean, and we have a great glacial parkway, right? So it takes you along the trail of the old glaciers.
Yep.
um, but now it's this climate change argument, which I don't deny that the climate is changing. I mean, Soder, do you deny that the climate is changing?
Seems to be every year is different.
Sure.
Like this year we had rain until just a couple of weeks ago. Farmers were having trouble getting stuff in the ground.
Hey, do you deny climate change?
No,
But where we start to differ,
I think we extrapolate on what it means a lot, and then I disagree with some of that. But I know where you're going, so no, I don't disagree that there's probably some form of climate change going on.
well, the thing that gets me is that, of course, as I've told most of you guys, I don't know if most of you guys know this, but so I'm originally from Texas, very hot climate. Was raised in Alaska though, and so there's a lot of history in Alaska. By I was raised in a native community. Um, there's a lot of history that has been passed down through the native in through the native community in the native communities that is older than a lot of our history.
Yeah.
That's been
Yep.
passed down for hundreds and hundreds of years. And of course, because the Inupiaq and Yupiks, which some lazily would just call them Eskimos, because many of them were nomadic people, the weather was very important to them to track the weather and to know, to try to have an idea of the seasons and things like that. So of course, they've been tracking the weather much longer than we have. So we hear these arguments every single year. Oh, this is the hottest summer in history, or this is the coldest winter in history. But they're not talking about the history of mankind. They're talking about the thermometer history, which is really and truly only 130,
Yeah,
140,
130, 140 years. Yep.
yeah, 140 years. So we're not looking back to the mini ice age. We're talking about 130 years ago. So the concern for me though is having an engineering background, um, this this hoax, okay, of green energy, right? Um, at the end of the day, I understand that our GDP and energy production go very close together, right?
Yeah,
Right.
we need affordable, reliable energy.
The
That's what makes
problem is,
United States is fundamentally the fact that we have transportable energy is what made this nation.
sure,
Gas, natural gas,
natural
oil.
gas, oil. The problem is that the truth be known, the the renewable energy sources that are being shoved down our throat are anything but affordable
Correct.
and anything but efficient.
And they require fossil fuels to be developed, to be created. That's the irony.
Really?
Yeah.
So in what in
There's
which
not a
form?
there's not a single renewable force or renewable energy product that doesn't originate out of fossil energy. So your wind turbines, those composites and those metals have to be made with a lot of energy, a lot of coal energy.
Sure.
Okay. The solar panels that we make, there's a lot of base minerals that are used to create those, and to mine those require a lot of diesel. To transport them require a lot of diesel. You cannot create. The, here's the biggest. I'm going to jump. This is the thing that frustrates me the most. Do you know what truly is a renewable, reliable, consistent energy source? And it's renewable. And it doesn't require any fossil fuels. It's not a trick question. It's here's my big setup and then I just forgot.
Hydro.
Hydro. Thank you.
Okay.
It's hydro.
Okay.
Now here's one of the problems. When we talk about Minnesota's currently in the 25 and 25, we have to be 25% renewable by 2025, and now they want to be 100% with the Green New Deal in 50 years or whatever it is. Okay. So you know, in this 2025, up until a couple years ago, hydro was not included at all as renewable energy in that. Now it sort of is. There's small hydro and there's big hydro, and there's a little niche category of hydro that's included in that 25 and 25, but it's very limited. We get like out in rural Minnesota, I couldn't tell you the percentages, but we're talking for sure it's over 30%. I think it's higher than that of our electricity in rural Minnesota comes from Great Missouri Energy and Great River Energy, both hydro, both come pumping into the state.
But we have the Mississippi River starts in Minnesota.
Hydroelectric is not considered renewable energy when we talk about renewable energy
Really?
sources. I couldn't make this up. I'm telling
Blows
you.
my mind.
It is
Literally.
up until a couple of years
Dead right.
ago, I could look you in the face and say any hydroelectricity. That's not true. We had a little bit of a law change because we were pushing and saying hydro is as renewable as you get. And they said, well, we'll include this little section. It's called small hydro. And I can't give you an example of it. I think it's probably along the lines of like what they used to have in Granite Falls. They don't produce energy.
What the heck? I mean, this blows my mind.
No, I don't believe they do. From the river, I don't think they do. But in any case, there's a certain section, so they can look you in the eye and say, well, sure, we include hydro. But they have to qualify it. The hydro that we think of is like the dams, like the Hoover Dam.
Right.
No, that's not renewable energy.
How so? I mean, okay. I'm just this blows my mind. So you're telling me that if we were to figure out a way to run the entire country on the energy produced from Missouri River, Mississippi River, the River Nile, whatever. If we were to figure out how to run the world off of energy from the rivers and creeks around the world,
correct?
Are you honestly telling me that wouldn't be considered renewable energy?
No, it's not. What's considered renewable energy right now is primarily wind and solar. Is there another one that even comes to mind? There might be something. That
wind and solar are very inefficient.
When you tidal, tidal maybe.
No, one of the
tidal is a form of
energy you have is ethanol. But biofuels. Biofuels is considered renewable. Even those are a little bit qualified because anything that's happening in Minnesota has to be next generation biofuels, and next generation is fancy for saying basically switchgrass. There's some other examples, but that's the primary one. So as we expand and grow in biofuels, the only ones that go towards these measuring sticks are the advanced biofuels, which again is basically switchgrass. There's some other examples. One of the challenges we have with that is while we've made yellow corn into ethanol very well and they make money and stuff like that, switchgrass can't get out of the lab. It makes
But
sense in the lab, but they haven't been able to commercialize it.
the problem is that majority of those companies were considered profitable prior to the government taking back all subsidies. Once the subsidies went away, a lot of those companies went under. They were no longer
Yeah, no,
profitable.
but if
Their
you out
profit
by
margin.
us, we have about 4 or 5 ethanol plants
Oh,
in our
sure,
area.
sure.
They're profitable. I can't say by how much, and that's without subsidies. Now, what they do have is we have the 10% pushing for 15% mandate in automobile fuel having ethanol. So there is a mandate which sets a market rate for that because you have to buy it, therefore it can be produced. That's a fair argument, but there are no subsidies in the ethanol world right
Well, okay, but again, I understand that
now.
we don't consider them.
No more state. There might be some federal ones
There's
that
some
have.
federal subsidies, but the concern that I have is that if your product is so great, you would not have to force people to purchase that product, right? Um, and they are literally forcing us in many states to purchase their products when we go and we fill up our tanks.
Yeah.
I have to pay ridiculous amounts of money for ethanol-free gasoline to fill up my lawnmowers and my small engines because of
Yes.
what has been proven to be disastrous ethanol can
Yeah,
be
ethanol is bad for small engines.
for small engines.
Yep.
So, and I end up paying what 340 pennies a gallon, $3.40 a gallon
A lot
for
of pennies.
that is a lot of pennies per gallon for ethanol free fuel. But okay, so walk me through this because I know you've had a lot of
Yep.
of experience with these alternative energy sources.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there's nothing cheap. I mean,
No, now here's people will throw one of the reasons why you never see me throwing numbers on the table here. Every once in a while I will. But numbers don't always tell the truth, and you can take my numbers and you can move them around to say, they're these numbers instead. So you get in a tricky place when you talk about statistics or things like that. They can show numbers where solar energy is inexpensive, like down in Texas, and it largely is. But anyone that looks at how finances work, especially in big business, it's all how you slice the apple,
okay,
right?
I'm gonna go this way. So we are in the process of seeing a lot, a lot of um, uh, solar farms going up around the area
Well,
that we
here
live
in
in.
Minnesota, that's because that's a Ponzi scheme, and I'll explain that if you want me to. But
Oh,
Minnesota,
Yes,
it's a bad
please.
situation.
yeah,
Because
but
I hate Ponzi schemes.
I do. Yeah, I have this thing against Ponzi. Uh, this this thing against Ponzi schemes, but I also get my energy from a co-op. So I sit in on the meetings and things like that.
Yeah.
And for some reason, we have all of these solar solar farms going up, but projected our energy is going to get more expensive. So if it's cheaper, why is
Your energy actually has grown quite a bit more expensive over the last 25 years. Here's an electrical engineer that I find very reliable in his information told me, this was about a year ago, he said this. He said our actual electric energy use in Minnesota has gone down to the same level as what we were experiencing in about 1975 or 1976, which is pretty profound because we've
wow?
had a growing population. He said, however, we truly have done these energy efficient furnaces and,
Like
LED light bulbs, incandescent light bulbs. In fairness, incandescent light bulbs were basically like burning open flames. I mean, they were pretty energy consumption. But we don't do that anymore. The icky fluorescents, which were a waste of time, but LEDs, which I actually do like, burn a fraction, okay?
Sure,
But we're paying more per kilowatt
sure.
for our electricity, and we're going to continue to do that. First
what
of
you're
all,
saying is if we all moved back to incandescence, our energy costs would go down.
that was actually the argument that this electrical engineer told me. He goes, that if you want to bring down cost of energy, go back to using incandescent light bulbs. He actually said literally that. But the per kilowatt, we're spending more, and that's going to be natural course of as the world turns. But a lot of it has to do with these different things. So like wind turbines, They will show the reason why wind energy works is because natural gas is cheap.
Right.
If natural gas were to get expensive, you will find because the natural gas basically supplements, in some ways, if you argue, subsidizes the wind energy. But wind energy is cheap because it doesn't cost anything to have the wind.
Right.
But you have costs involved, like, oh, there's equipment out there. Oh, there's maintenance of equipment. There's equipment that's wear and tear. Here in Minnesota, all this renewable stuff faces one harsh reality, and it's called harsh winters. We
Right.
have very cold winters. And then, to be honest, we have some yesterday it was like 90 degrees here.
Right.
You have these wide variations, which wears down. I was told that the solar panels that are being installed in Minnesota, they profess the last 20 years. They estimate in Minnesota that the last about 15 years because of our winters.
Right.
Now, if they're telling me 15 years, what does that tell you?
10.
10. That's exactly what I do. Now, when they talk about how cheap solar energy is, they're just looking at the cost of creating it right there, right?
Sure.
What happens when you have to replace the cells? That's a cost, right? They in renewable energy in Minnesota, they never include deferred maintenance.
So walk me
They
through
never
this.
do.
So walk me through this Ponzi
Ponzi
scheme,
scheme?
because I'm assuming that the schemes that are taking place here in Minnesota are probably not originated in Minnesota. I'm sure that these things are
No,
happening in other
Minnesota
places.
does have something unique. Now, there might be other states like this, but hear me. I need to be clear with where the Ponzi scheme is. So we have one of our largest investor-owned electrical company is Xcel Energy. Okay. So it applies to Xcel Energy, what I'm talking about right now.
Right.
So like your co-op, the rules are a little bit different. I'm not sure about Ottertail, which is the other big one. Northern States Power is actually part of Xcel Energy. Those are the three big ones, but the one is actually part of the other. And that's really industrial anyway. So everything I'm talking about now is with Xcel Energy.
Okay.
In 2013, we passed a law that's called Community Solar Garden Law.
Okay.
And what a community solar garden was proposed to be was everyone in a community says, you know what? We think solar energy is cool and we think it's important. And we want to combine, like a commune, combine our resources and put shares in towards this. And in the shares, you agree to two things for these community solar gardens. You, number one, have someone that is there to put the solar panels in a location. They agree to that. And then number two, they have subscribers to this. And there's rules on the subscriptions. I don't have every single rule, but for example, one of the big rules is no one subscriber can take more than 40% of that energy. Okay? And I think there's also a rule where you have to have a certain number of small, quote unquote, small subscribers. Now, if you say that everyone in Wilmer wanted to do, and by the way, Candy White Power did an example of this a couple of years back. They built this little community solar garden that people bought shares into, okay? So they draw electricity off of that. That makes them happy. Where the Ponzi scheme comes in is, here's the rule, is Xcel Energy is required to buy this, okay? They have to buy it, no matter what it costs, by the way. Never a good thing in a free market world. You're required to buy it, okay? Number two, you have to have land in which to put this. Obviously, you have to have that. Number three, you need to have the subscribers, okay? Here's what's happening in Minnesota right now is outside forces have come into this nice little quaint community solar garden thing and turned it into a bonanza. Because here's what they do. They go to a landowner in rural Minnesota and they say, we need 10 acres from you. 10 good farmland acres. We're wide open out here, folks, for people that don't know our area. That's why you're seeing them go up out here. Plus, we have main trunk lines of Xcel out along us, so that's another reason why you're seeing it out by us. So they need 10 acres ideal. My little town of Princeburg has 6. Yes, we have our community solar garden now. Soder. And
so they're taking food production land. So land that was producing
food. It doesn't have to be, but it's flat and it's easy to build these solar. It's going in farmland right now.
Okay.
So what happened is, now they go to this landowner and say, the contracts right now are in between $1,200 to $1,400 per acre on a 25-year contract. So I come to you and say, I want to put solar gardens on 10 acres of your land. Now understand another thing, folks, is out here, I don't know what the average farm is, but your typical farm out here is north of 1,000 acres that you're farming. Okay, so 10 acres isn't a big chunk. I
10%,
will also tell you that you are
or
leasing
1%.
to a grower, to a farmer. If you're leasing land, you're leasing it for about $200 to $250 an acre. If you are owning the land and you produce, you hope to have, like if you're planting corn or soybeans, you're hoping to make 150 to $200 an acre off that land. So someone comes to you and says, "We'll pay you $1,400 an acre for a 25-year contract
Now,
for
is that
10
that
acres."
is that $1,400 an acre per year
No, it's $1,400.
for
Yes, per year for
per
25 years.
per year?
Yes.
Wow. Okay.
No. Wait, now you got me all turned around. No, $1,400 an acre. Yeah, per year for 25 years. No, that's correct. Okay, big money. Yes. Okay. So anyway,
That's $14,000 per year.
yes, for 25 years. So why would you say no?
Oh
I
my
would say
God.
yes. I don't fault the landowner.
Sure.
But here's another thing that you need. Okay, so they need the subscribers. Remember that, right? So they go businesses, and I had someone from Excel tell me this. So I'm going off of their numbers. This is frozen. Did we lose it?
Your camera. Yes, I'm working on
Okay, but I can keep talking.
it. You can keep talking.
Okay. So they have to find subscribers. They go to a business, and this Excel lobbyist told me they'll go to a business and say, if you buy this solar energy, you will get up to a 50% discount on your electricity for that. Okay. Now, which business would say no to getting a 50% discount on their electricity? You'd be stupid to say no.
Sure.
Other examples is they go to farm sites and they say, hey, I've also heard down to 2%. We can give you a 2%. And a farmer told me that. He goes, they came to me and said, just sign here. And he was like, what else do I have to do? Nothing. Just sign here, and you're buying X amount of solar energy at a 2% savings on your electric bill. And this guy said, why would I say no? And I said, how much did you save? He goes, not a lot, probably $850 a year, but $850 is $850, right? So I don't fault them. But I asked this one guy who said this because he's a good friend of mine, and I said, who pays for that discount? He goes, what do you mean? And I said, well, the electricity has to be paid for. This business is getting discounted.
Right.
Okay. And you are getting discounted, small amount, but 2% on yours, but everyone's doing this. Who pays for that? And he goes, who? And I said, the ratepayer. And this guy goes, I have Excel. I'm a ratepayer. And I go, and you're paying for it. He goes, so I'm paying for my 2% discount. I go, yes, you are. And so is everyone else. Now, here's the real dangerous thing in Minnesota. They came forward. Right now, there is one catch to the community solar garden, in that you have to be a subscriber in the same county or a contingent county, meaning we live here in Kaneohe County, so it would have to be Renville County, Chippewa, whatever, anything that surrounds Kaneohe County.
Right.
Be a subscriber. They wanted to release that, so now the Excel, most of their ratepayers are in the Twin Cities and suburbs. Okay, so now you can get a discount if you're a business in, name your suburb. Okay,
Right.
Stillwater. I don't know if
Sure.
they have Excel, but let's say they do. Okay, Edina, I think they do. If you're a business owner and you can get 50% on that, and in effect you are building some solar garden out in BF, Minnesota,
Right.
out by us, why would you say no? And if the landowner says, well, 10 of my 1,000 acres that I'm farming, I'm going to get $1,400 a month, $1,400 a year for 25 years on each of those 10 acres, I won't say no.
No.
Everyone's happy except for what happens. You have these solar gardens all over the place out here. Here's another number. I told you I don't like numbers, but I'm going to give you another number. Here's one more number. We sat down with an expert in this and said, if Minnesota wanted to have 10% of their energy solar, 10% of our energy solar, you would have to assume, I have to assume a rate. We see 50% sunlight throughout the year. Do we see 50% sunlight? No. We're Minnesota. Well, let's say at the rate of 50% sunlight throughout the year, energizing 10% of our electricity needs in Minnesota. How many acres of solar panels do you need? You know what the answer is? 1 million. You need 1 million acres for 10%. So I look at this and all these people that are shouting out, we need to have solar because we need to save the planet, and we need solar because it's good for us and stuff like that, and all this stuff, and we need to have 100% Again, clean energy, even though hydro isn't clean energy.
Right.
Okay, it is, by the way, but what they're calling it, and you can only get 10% from 1 million acres of land. I go back in the early days of Rush Limbaugh, and I listen. He always said, "Follow the money." These people that are spouting the clean energy are making crap loads of money off of this.
Of course.
Because that Howard Hill, anyone that's seen Music Man, Howard Hill came in. There's trouble in music. There's trouble in River City. Trouble. Sorry, I'm a musical guy.
The capital
no,
less than that stands for solar.
That's right. Capital stands for solar. They're coming to town and they're saying, "Hey, we can put solar panels up." That guy is making a ton of money. Do you know that Excel owns some of these solar gardens now, and they're making money off of that too? So they're double dipping in all this.
Right.
Because that's another thing. Excel has no problem doing this because they're guaranteed an 11% return on all their investments. So every time you, the ratepayer, pays something,
right,
they're guaranteed to make 11% off of that. Guaranteed. And guess what? Now, we call them rate writers. So all these extra expenses don't flow through. They don't even flow through the corporate books. They go on as a rate writer. If you're in Excel, you have all these lists of extras that you pay for. These solar gardens are one of them. You're paying for this. And Excel investors are making 11% on it. So I don't know if that's a pure sense Ponzi scheme. Someone can correct me on that, but it's basically a Ponzi scheme because the people who are supposedly saving money on this are actually paying for those savings.
So why are we not building more nuclear plants?
Well, here's a crazy thing: is because if you want to have clean, reliable, affordable electricity, nuclear is by far and away the best.
Sure,
by far and away.
Yeah.
And someone says, now here's the first argument that they come up with. They'll say something like, "Well, it's not safe." But that isn't true. We refer to it as the naval tech. The Navy, U.S. Navy has the premier technology for nuclear, which you can use. Which, by the way, using the Navy technology, I was told this by an energy expert a couple of years ago that the fissionable material that you need to make a aircraft carrier go for 25 years is the size of your fist. And by the way, the Navy technology can use that stuff that we have stored in casks in the mountains. They can use that. Use 90% of it. So to answer your question, because when they first throw out, well, it's dangerous, it's this, and this, they go, no, actually, here's the Navy technology. And you know what their next thing is? Well, it's too expensive to create. And I say, why is it too expensive? And they say, because it takes 25 years to get a nuclear electrical facility up and running. And I go, why does it take 25 years? 2 words, folks. Our favorite one on this show: government regulation.
Sure.
They bury it.
Sure.
So yes, we could have nuclear energy that is safe, reliable, inexpensive. France, this is one you're going to have to take my word at it because I don't know many French people, but the same person was telling me all these numbers that I told you I wouldn't give. France is like predominantly nuclear energy.
Oh, sure. So
and you can't get more European socialists than France, can you?
No. But so the interesting part about it is that for me to be able to have enough energy that I'm going to use in my lifetime, which is going to be 130 years, but in my lifetime, for me to be able to get enough energy to be able to last me my entire lifetime, it would take a Rubik's Cube size amount of uranium, right? Which is what we enriched uranium is what we typically use for these nuclear plants.
Yes.
A Rubik's Cube. If I were talking solar garden, I would need 450 football fields worth of solar gardens for me to be able to produce enough energy to be able to last me the rest of my life.
And again, what are those solar panels made of, by the way? They call them base minerals. Copper. There's a bunch of them that are like copper, which,
right.
By the way, the people that are big on solar gardens also tend to be social justice warriors, right?
Right.
You know how these minerals are mined overseas? By child labor. And by
I'm
the
not
way,
laughing at the child labor part, obviously.
They die from it. Totally serious.
I believe in teaching kids how to work, though.
My good friend, Representative Jeremy Munson, gave an excellent argument on the House floor this year to all this stuff, to all the people that wanted these community solar gardens. And he articulated very specific things. And someone stood up and said, how come we don't know these things? How come no one speaks up about this? And he's like, well, first of all, I am right now. Second of all, the people that are interested in this solar energy don't want you to know about this stuff. When they talk about, by the way, when they talk about, well, this is all going to work when we can store the energy in batteries, good luck, folks, because the only way that we can store in energies right now is in very expensive battery, cadmium lead batteries, heavy metals, toxic heavy metals.
We have to mine
and we have to
these.
mine it
Right. We have to mine
with big throat choking diesel engine machines that go in there and mine them and cut down trees and get underneath there to get the minerals. All this stuff, folks. That's what it takes to make a solar panel.
I mean, in lithium is not an easy mineral to mine, for one, and these lithium batteries that we're using to store a lot of this energy, I mean, it's terribly inefficient.
Well, and where are they going to go when we start needing to landfill all those?
There's a question. There's a question.
So I'm just saying there's a lot of hypocrisy in this, and that's why when I first found out, I go back to my original statement about hydro. When they don't even include hydroelectric as renewable, something's wrong with this picture.
Absolutely.
Okay. So I was also told, here's one other thing I was told. I can't prove this, but it's delicious, so I like it. I was told, and it probably is true, by the way, because I've been told this many different times, the energy it takes to build, to construct, including forming the blades and everything, but one turbine, I am told that the energy it takes to create that wind turbine will never create that much energy back out of its lifespan. Uh-oh. Someone's calling.
No, that's very interesting.
No, by the way, lest I confuse everyone, I actually don't have a problem with pursuing renewable energy sources.
Sure.
I'm one of those, we call ourselves, here's my quotation, I'm an all of the above person. I believe that there is a role, and
Sound like a Republican.
Yeah, I know. Sounds like an easy way out, too, right? There is a role, but what you find when you really investigate renewable is that localized, they call it, I always forget the term now, but I call it micro, but basically localized energy sources. Like, let's say a business wants to put solar panels on their roof. There are examples to where that makes sense. I will tell you, I'm a huge fan of. I've been away from the house for 2 weeks now, and I still can't think. Where you drill the wells underground.
Okay.
Geothermal.
Okay.
I'm a huge fan of geothermal.
Sure.
Huge fan.
Sure.
It doesn't make a lot of sense with cheap natural gas right now, but if you build a geothermal heating and cooling system for your house, they pay themselves off quickly.
Right.
They last forever.
Less than 10 years.
And if other energy sources really start firing up, then it actually can be less than that.
Sure.
Because I had a friend who built a 5,000 square foot old Victorian style house. It was a new house, but he built it like those things were not designed for energy savings. Okay.
So he used paper for insulation?
No, he did not. But that's basically, he had a turret and he had all these other things, tall ceilings, the whole 9 yards. So expensive, right?
Sure.
He had geothermal in that, and he told me over the winter months his electric bill, because that's all he paid for geothermal. But all his entire electric bill, he's still building it, so there wasn't a ton of electrical use. But if we're in there with equipment and stuff building it, I was a paint contractor, so if my airless sprayer is running, it was part of that. He was paying $26 a month on his electric bill.
Oh, wow.
And that was his entire energy for the house. Geothermal is all on the upfront capital, and it lasts forever.
Sure. But there's no kickbacks on geothermal.
No, there is not. No, there is not.
Yeah.
But my favorite Minnesota Senator Al Franken.
Oh yeah, that guy.
This is one thing we agreed on. He went around and he said everything should go geothermal for heating and cooling, and I actually agree with him. I mean, obviously there's some cases where that doesn't make sense, but again, out here in rural Minnesota, because where the expense comes in is you have to dig wells. You also have to have the land to dig those wells because they go down deep into the ground. That's what they do, and then they run the system through there. That's what happens.
Sure.
So it's expensive to dig, and you have to have the land to dig it.
So would you push a bill stating that all houses in Minnesota had to go geothermal?
No.
That sounds like more government. Thank you for not going down that.
I was setting him up for it. I was completely set.
But I would go for. This is how we came up with the small version hydro is included in renewable. We said, listen, hydro is as renewable as you get. It should be included towards that 25 and 25. Seemed reasonable. That gets shot down in a hurry.
I think you should go away from the 25 and 25.
Well, yeah,
but
then
sure.
From what it sounds like, we'd meet that goal right now.
Which, by the way, this is
Why
a
would we
good
do
time to
that?
pause, and everyone hates government because we're influenced by all these lobbyists, which unfortunately has a level of truth to it, a big level of truth. But when people come and say, well, you have big oil and you have big natural gas lobbyists coming in there and telling you what for and pushing you around, you know the most pushy people are in St. Paul. It's the renewable energy lobbyists.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Oh, they get, and you, by the way, you know who some of the bigger renewable energy lobbyists are? Public unions. They're the ones that are lobbying for this more than anyone else. So you're like, well, wait a second. Why are teachers lobbying for renewable energy? I don't know why. But they are.
As a big
Sounds
person,
like a setup for a joke.
as a big person, I find it very offensive that in order to make something sound really terrible, you put the word big in front of it. If we did that with everything, that would be a problem, right?
Don't we, though?
Well, but no, not really.
Like
We said,
like Q's a big boy.
yeah, big Q.
Big brother.
I like Big Q. Big Q is good. I like that.
If we said something like big education, which technically would be fitting.
Would be fitting.
It would be fitting. I mean, if we called it
Sounds like a shirt idea.
you know what? I'm thinking we might have to do that. Big education. For sure. Yeah, big business. Big business is always
Check out
a
my
thing.
big education.
Yeah, check out my
if I-
big education.
I wonder if I have to start referring to it as that as big education. No, but you're absolutely right. Now the latest one that we're talking about is big pharma, not just pharma, but big. Pharma.
Yeah, big pharma. Big pharma. Yeah, that's bad. Pharma is okay. Big pharma, yeah, that's big ag. Big ags.
Well, that one they kind of put a little bit of an extra bite on that one. They refer to it as factory farmers. Factory. I don't know. That doesn't sound good, does it?
Yeah, yeah.
But there's. I tell my farmer friends out here. I said, "Do you have a John Deere tractor and a John Deere combine? If you do, you're a factory farmer."
Yeah.
They won't equate it as saying that, but in effect, that's what you are.
Yeah.
Even though, which I know, the great thing about the shows we run all over the place. Do you know what percentage of farms in the U.S. are owned by a family? Family farming? What percentage of farms is family farming?
25%.
A little higher.
30%.
97%.
Holy smokes. That's big industry.
Yeah. Pretty much everyone that farms is family farms. Now, are some of them limited liability? You bet. Some
Sure.
of them incorporated. You bet. They're owned by family. I'm not twisting this in any way. That's the reality is there just really aren't any factory farms. There are not corporate farms out there like they profess. They're owned by family.
Wow. Yeah, I would have never guessed that, especially based on what I hear on TV. So yeah. So everything is
So, but back to the dirty word. I think that's a dirty word, renewable energy.
yeah.
The dirty renewable.
Dirty
big renewable. Big renewable.
Oh,
Yeah.
there's another idea.
Yeah, big law.
But
So
it goes,
for Nick
it
and
goes
Kate
back
out
to,
there, big law. We're gonna fight against big law.
Yep. So it's also I'm gonna give a story. I'm gonna pick on my brother. I know he's not watching this, and if he is, then I'll find out with a text here soon. But I doubt he is. But this was this was back in it's a few years ago now. But when gas shot up to our $4 a gallon back in 2011 to 12, those
I did not like that.
No, I didn't like it either. But I was visiting him. He doesn't live there anymore, but he was in a Chicago suburb. And we're riding along, and he's complaining about everything is because of big oil, and we should just get rid of our dependence on oil. And I said, M, that's his name because we don't want to dox him, right? I said, M, we're driving.
Oh, yeah, sure. You won't dox him.
You deserve it. You big baby. You're so worried about people saying bad things. Like they can even find your house to give you a hard time. I can't even find your house, and I live like 2 miles from you.
Oh, you want me to give you his address over here?
No, I know where it is, but I'd have to try a couple times to get there. I drive past on my sugar beet semi every once in a while. I should lay on the horn next time.
Oh,
It's
dear.
me. But anyway, when my brother is telling me this, we're driving in his SUV.
Yeah.
And we're driving his SUV. My brother's business at the time was he did customized woodworking, cabinets, furniture, doors, stuff like that for skyscrapers in Chicago. And I
Sure.
said, we get rid of the oil. You're not driving this vehicle and your business is shut down. What do you feel about that? Well, it's always funny. The people that like want to get rid of oil, they're the most responsible users of oil first. Like, well, we don't waste it. We use it efficiently. So the whole Al Gore thing was like his was they someone actually did like the carbon footprint of Al Gore. And it was like equivalent to like my small town
Right.
or something like that. But he can use it, sort of thing. So that's one of the funny things. I guess the point that I'm making is that the people who want to talk big about this energy use, what are they going to do if we actually succeeded in everything they're talking about? Talk about farming, getting rid of the big farms. What are you going to eat?
Well, the thing about it is less than 10% of the actual CO2 that is less than 10% of the actual CO2 that's emitted is actually man-made CO2. So the majority of the CO2 is actually coming from the naturally from the ocean being emitted. So um, the science that supports climate change um, is so incredibly skewed. It's not even funny. Um,
Well, here's where it attacks, and here comes to the root of where you and I are actually going to agree on something.
wow, this is scary,
Okay?
guys, stop listening.
I believe there's lots of rights we have in the United States, but there's two fundamental ones that really kind of change the course of history. Number one, the right to own a property, truly own it. Number two, the right to defend it and protect it. Okay? And we have lots of rights here.
Except from the government.
Hold on now. Okay, so if that is what makes the United States so great is my ability, whether it's you know, the size of a garage or the size of a shed or all the way up to the size of a football field, I have the ability, or larger, I have the right to own land.
You mean to co-own with the government?
No, you have a right to own it. You're getting to my point though. That is truly our right to own land. But what they're doing in the progressive movement to get away from this ability to own land is well, you can own your piece of land, but we all share the air. We share water, right? See where I'm
Right.
going with this, right?
Sure.
We share communities, and all other efforts are to distract away. And so renewable energy is to go towards well, you're doing climate change. Your efforts that you're doing, while it may be okay for you to do, you're affecting other people by this, and so you can't do it. So it's a way of controlling what you do with your. I mean, owning land is the specific thing, but there's a sovereignty under God.
Right.
As I've said in the past, that's who we answer to is God. Well, the way you answer to government is to say, well, you're not the only person that uses that water.
Sure.
Right?
Sure.
And that's where some of these things are coming in. The problem is that real science doesn't favor their argument. That's one of the problems that they have. So when we get to this climate change thing, that it's man-made climate change, they can't prove it. They can't prove it. They cannot prove that man is causing any sort of climate change. Everything else is just arguing the finer points of that. They cannot prove it. And yet what they do now, even in the Minnesota legislature, is that there was one time a couple years ago they go, because we're called deniers. If you deny that man is causing climate change,
Yeah.
you're called a denier. You're labeled.
Yeah.
Big denier.
Yeah.
In
Well,
this case of this, right? Big
yeah.
denier.
Big deny.
Big denier. Okay? And they thought they had us because they're on the floor. They're going, come on, all you deniers in the room. If you do not believe that there is climate change caused by human beings, go ahead and raise your hand. Feel comfortable doing it. And I kind of look around the room and I go, I feel like I'm missing the joke here because I raised my hand. There's about a dozen of us that did. And they thought they were mocking us. And I'm like, no, I'm comfortable with myself because it isn't true. So anyway, at the very least, they cannot prove it. And some of the causes that they're claiming that's causing dirty water, by the way, they can't prove it either. And actually, where they can prove where dirty water is coming from, they don't like to talk about it.
Well, you Republicans all want dirty water and dirty air.
Right.
Grandma over a cliff.
So you get into water. We're shifting around here a bit. You get into point source and non-point source water runoff. Point source is basically if you flush a toilet and it goes through a sewer system, you can measure that water because you know where it's going, right? Non-point source is like on farmland. The rain comes down and it runs off into a ditch and goes somewhere, okay? They can't measure non-point source.
Sure.
They have models. They model it and say that farmers are causing nitrogen and stuff like this. The funny thing is they can measure that when it comes out of a city storm sewer, right?
Sure.
And they have. You know what they found?
Coming from the city.
Well, there's at least a ton of it. And when they really find it is, and this sort of makes sense, is if there's a huge rain event, there's a huge surge of it,
Sure.
which makes sense. If it's been dry for a while and it builds up. Also, anecdotally, I could argue if a farmer is paying in his business for nitrogen on their ground, for anyone that knows wants to know what nitrogen is, what you spread on your grass to make it green, is nitrogen fertilizer. But here's what happens. A farmer has to pay per pound a lot of money to put it on many, many acres of land. So they're going to be judicious with where they put it. They don't
Sure.
want to put too much on.
Sure.
Now, when you go to Menards and you buy your lawn fertilizer, your weed and feed, and the bag says covers 10,000 square feet. I have about 9,000 square feet on my yard. Is roughly what I measure, and I'm kind of even rounding up with my house footprint. Okay, but let's say 9,000 square feet. I'll be darned if that bag that covers 10,000 never really covers my lawn. So I use 2 bags. Guess what? I'm probably putting it on a little bit too heavy, right?
You're laying it on a little thick.
Which makes an even better lawn.
Right.
Okay? Oh,
right.
by the way, before we leave, we have to talk about dandelions here in Minnesota. I have a story to tell you that you won't believe even if I tell you. But anyway, has to do with weed feed. But so it makes sense. And then if it's running off of my lawn, it's running onto concrete or asphalt,
Right.
more than likely in town.
Sure.
So that's what's happening. So we know at least there's a source from the city, okay, about this. They can't measure what's coming from farmland. And where they have been able to measure, we won't go into long version of this story, but where they can measure, they found that it's trace amounts that's coming out of farmland. But they want to control that farmland. Why?
Sure.
Because someone that owns 500 acres is
Because
better
that's
to
what
control.
totalitarians do.
That's
They want to
exact-
control.
That's absolutely right.
Big government.
So anyway,
Okay, so tell me about these dandelions. Because I've been saying, I think the government is dropping dandelion seeds out of planes onto my farm.
oh, I got it
Yeah.
better than that.
Oh, really?
I have a way, Q, for you to make some money.
Well, by all means, let's hear about it. What's the big plan?
You're going to call me a liar. But actually, people that are saying hooray for this. So in the legislature this year, for those that want me to compromise, well, we compromise. We have a pollinator issue in Minnesota. If you don't know what pollinators are, they are bees and butterflies.
Right.
And other things, bees and butterflies.
Sure.
Okay. And they're saying we need to protect the pollinators. Okay.
Okay.
Monarchs aren't happy with Minnesota. Bees aren't happy with Minnesota.
Yeah.
And it's because of the mean big factory farm.
Big ag. Yeah.
Big ag. So they've tried many different ways to help make a happier habitat, happier home. Whether it be with ditch mowing, which is an issue out here. I won't go into the different ways, but ditch mowing or things you can and can't use and stuff like that. Well, they have a new way that we've provided in Minnesota. Okay? And probably under some single category of compromising that we're going to put money towards supporting pollinators because we love our bees and butterflies. There was money that was taken from the taxpayer and put into an account. $900,000. I think it's over 2 years because we're a biennium. So we'll think happy thoughts and think it's only $450,000 a year. There's a new grant program starting this year. You get paid to put dandelions in your yard.
Oh, really? Well, I should get paid because I got plenty of dandelions.
Well,
in there.
I said this was an amazing thing. I said all I have to do is not spray weed and feed. Maybe not in 1 year, but by the second year, my yard will be all dandelions.
Yeah.
So not only do I get to do that, but I get to get paid for putting dandelions in my yard. How great is that?
Wait, so how does that work with mowing then? Like, can you not mow?
Well, dandelions grow back pretty quick. But that's
So I don't have to
that's
mow
true,
and
but-
I don't have to spray chemicals in my yard.
So there is
You don't
a
have to do
there is
that.
a state
then
of
you could probably
Minnesota.
harvest them and make some wine.
Oh, there you go,
Dandelion
dandelion
wine.
wine
Pretty good.
for sure. And then you
Make little
save the
treats with
bees so you
the-
can make
with the
mead
heads.
out of the honey. So
My
this
wife
is a
has made-
win-win all around. All around.
So in Minnesota
you
right
get
now,
paid.
you can get grant money to grow dandelions in your yard. Now here's here's another thing about state grants. You're not going to see any of that money. You know why? Well, actually, no, we won't say why you might, but but here's a fairer statement. All these grant things end up getting scooped up by a handful of really big groups.
Right.
That's what also happens with those. And typically in the Twin Cities is what happens here in Minnesota. So there are people that will be getting this grant money to grow their dandelions, heaven knows where. Okay. Now, anyone that isn't from the Midwest, it's not tough to grow dandelions out here. Right?
No,
Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, it's the only plant that I can grow successfully.
That's basically most of us in our lawns. That's right. They survive too much water, not enough water, too much heat, cold. They're out there every single late spring, early summer. We are covered with the yellow dandelions, and then it turns into that nice powder puffy thing that as a kid, the kids run around and blow them into the air. And
why aren't we paying the children?
We should
to
be
spread the seed.
I think that's a great idea.
There you go.
So no,
I mean,
so that's my
they literally
dandelion
work
story.
for pennies.
A $900,000, I think, per biennium grant that you can get paid to grow dandelions in your yard. So there you go.
Well, I tell you what, I know my wife is watching. I hope she's watching anyway. Abort the mowing project. We are going to grow the heck out of these dandelions and make some money. So,
You make your wife mow the lawn?
my wife likes putting on her headphones and going out and mowing the lawn.
You know what little I
And-
know of your wife, the more and more I get to know her, the more and more I like her.
Yeah.
She's can we say badass on this show?
Yeah,
Yep.
sure. Absolutely.
She's badass.
Yeah, she's pretty badass. Oh, yeah.
I'm a little bit of afraid of her when I see her, which is good. That's healthy.
It makes two of us. A little bit of fear. Little bit of fear is
I'll
not
be
a
very
bad
clear.
thing.
I fear my wife too, and it's a healthy fear, and it's a righteous fear. She's a nurse; she can make it look natural. Like
Like an accident.
poor Tim had a heart attack.
Oh man. Well, guys, hey, it's been a great visit. Thank you so much, Tim, for coming on and bringing your bag of wisdom, and we appreciate
Baloney.
Medium government.
Yeah, in medium. I think that every time we talk, you become a little bit less of a big government guy, so we can appreciate that. So,
I told you I'm not as big government as some people think.
oh man,
Just not as libertarian as you would like.
well.
We
you
didn't
know,
argue enough tonight, though. That's we gotta. Our
You know-
viewership is probably down. We have to find some subject that we can.
You know
really
what?
Argue
So the one thing that we definitely disagree on is and for some reason you say that you are all about you state that you're all about people's rights, right?
Sure.
Okay. I'm not sure how you can say that and be totally against, because you said you were totally against physician-assisted suicide.
Right.
I'm not sure how you can have that argument.
Well, probably mostly hypocrisy, right? But
I
no,
think
it's not.
all hypocrisy.
No, it's not, because I thought that was one of the big subjects we were going to talk about tonight, and I think we're out of time, so we can save that for the next time we talk.
Well,
Nope, because there is a significant difference in what we're talking about, and that's what I was prepared to argue my point with that, and we're just going to have to save it as a teaser for the next time.
we'll save it. But if we discuss that topic,
Yep.
Um,
Oh, we'll disagree, but I have my arguments will at least be heard. I'm not just going to look at you and go, "Cuz."
Wait,
well,
are you talking
why?
like cousin or because?
No, because I know. As soon as I said that to the African American in the room, I was suddenly insulting to someone. Isn't that what do they call that, appropriation?
Yes.
I think it was misappropriation.
Yeah, but
Yeah, she's the worst.
I'm not allowed to say "cuz" because I didn't grow up. It was a different. It's because. Thanks for
Well,
clarifying there, Soder.
I thought. Oh, that's right. You grew up in a nice suburb of Chicago.
Blue collar, very blue collar.
Very blue collar. Well, blue collar is not necessarily the hood, though.
No, it was not the hood. Now I went to school.
My hood was no collar.
I went to school where if you include the Italians as their own race, which they certainly do,
Yeah.
okay, then I was actually a minority in my high school.
Oh wow.
I qualify that by saying that because we had lots of Italians. But yeah, we had a very a very it isn't mixed race. What do we call it? What's the term now? It's mixed
Diverse?
race, but what is it?
Diverse.
Diverse. Oh, I had a very diverse school.
There
we
you
had,
go.
we had gang members in my school. We also had kids
Italian gangs?
that too, but we had African American
It's
gangs.
called mafia.
We had
Mafioso.
I was gonna say we had mafia kids
Okay.
in our school. We also
In
had
Chicago.
we had
Soder, imagine that.
we had vice
I know,
vice
right?
lords and disciples in our
Really?
school. Yeah. I was taught
Tim's kind of a badass.
I was taught how to do the vice lord symbol and then told don't ever do that in public because if you do it in the wrong
Come on, do it on stream. Do it on stream.
I was told by a couple of my African American friends back then in the 80s it was called strutting.
You had African American friends.
I don't believe him.
Okay.
I don't believe. Prove it.
This is
A white person
it.
having black
I'll bring
friends.
my yearbook, okay? I always love the argument. I always love when people go, so do you know any gay people? And I'm like, so then I have to say, hi, I'm Tim, and I have a gay friend. Because it sounds so insulting.
Well, as black people, the one thing you always look out for is a telltale sign of a racist is when they tell you my best friend in college was black.
Well, here's the kicker: is one of my best friends. Actually, she was. Is it mixed race? What do we even? I don't even know what the terms are now. But one of my best friends, she was half Italian, half African American.
Okay, so you're not allowed to use the word mulatto anymore.
No,
right?
that's what I say. You can't say it.
Oh, that's the word you were looking for.
She probably would have beat the crap. Her name was Marjorie, and she would have beat the crap out of me if I said mulatto. She got mad. I will tell you the most insulting, racist thing I've ever said in my life, and it really was. We went on a trip together over to Europe. Not just the two of us. We went to one of those high school trips over to Europe, and we left the pool after one day, and she was a fairer skinned black person. So she's half Italian.
Sure.
You know? But most people would say she's African American. She was dark enough for that. But I saw her tan lines.
Brown paper bag test.
She was darker than the brown paper bag.
Yeah, she was black.
I know this is so insulting. I was just a stupid white teenage kid, okay? But I said, Marjorie, I didn't know that you could have tan lines. I honestly had my life flash across my.
If looks could kill, right?
Not looks. I think she was actually because she could take me. Because again, the women that can beat me up, I have a great deal of respect for. Marjorie could definitely beat me up. And I said, Marjorie, she goes, that is the most racist thing I've ever heard. I didn't know you were such a racist, or whatever she called me back then.
Wow.
And I said, it was actually just an honestly stupid question. I said I wasn't going anywhere with it.
I had a guy tell me that I was lucky that I was black because I couldn't get skin cancer. So.
That doesn't sound right.
Okay, there's racism and then there's just ignorance, right? So I was very ignorant in my question. And once she got mad at me and explained that, I go, I guess that makes sense. I go, I shouldn't have said it. Yeah. Back in the 80s, you could get away with saying something stupid without it costing you your entire career in life.
Oh,
yeah.
Well, until you bring it up.
Yeah, now that you brought it up, re-election is going to be tough, buddy. So.
Probably not for that. I do have other things that make re-election tough.
No.
Doing this show.
Well, guys, hey, once again, great having you guys on the show. Thank you very much, Tim Soder. Always a pleasure. Hey, guys, we'll look forward to seeing you guys next Sunday. You know what? Let's just do it. Are you available next Sunday?
I think so, yeah.
I want to have a discussion about this. About tan
lines?
Huh?
About tan lines?
You know what? I'll show you guys my tan line.
Oh, dear.
Oh, boy.
Okay. I'm not going to be here.
Friendly show here.
No, but I do want to have a discussion as it pertains to whether or not
Doctor-assisted suicide.
Yeah, physician-assisted suicide, whether or not that's acceptable for someone who is pro-life. Right? Because many times pro-life and physician-assisted suicide go hand in hand. If you can't kill a baby, you can't kill a person.
Right.
And I'm often a little thrown off by that because I find that a lot of progressives will actually argue against it.
Yep.
Because you shouldn't do that. But if you have the right to do whatever you will with your own body, then I think you should have the right to take your own life. But anyway, I don't want to get too far ahead
Next
of it.
Sunday night, we will talk
Next
about
Sunday night,
physician-assisted suicide.
we will talk about people's right to life. So, and if they have the right to choose their own destinies. So,
Be a fun one.
it will be a fun one. It will be a fun one. I'm gonna get a couple of other people here. If we can get Nick Ricada here. That would be fun. I would like to have him here.
We're gonna need more mics.
Well, you know what? We can do that. We'll have whatever we need here. But guys, again, yeah, your body, your choice. Punchy, you're absolutely correct. But the question is whether or not you have the right to call in reinforcements and professional help to help you with that. That's the question. But we will discuss it next week. And great having you guys on the show. Remember, always stay in the fight. Less government is better government. And we will continue to have discussions. But always don't be afraid to stand up for what's right, what you believe in. And as I always say, guys, if you disagree with anything I have to say here, hey, I'm perfectly fine with that. In fact, I would like to hear from you. Leave your comments below. If you're not subscribing to the show, be sure to subscribe. We have discussions about these types of things on our Discord fairly often. If you guys have interest in the Discord, the link is down below. But we look forward to hearing from you guys. And if you guys want to join in on the conversation, always feel free to do that. So thank you guys so much for joining us. We'll see you guys next Sunday, same time, same place, 7 o'clock. And as always, have a wonderful week. Thank you.
Bye.